Welcome to the Principles of Economics. I'm Patrick Flaherty. I'll be teaching this class this semester. Thanks so much for signing up. I hope you enjoy the class and that you'll end the course with a good understanding of the principles of microeconomics. The textbook we'll be using in this class is one that I've used before. It's, in my opinion, the best textbook out there for this particular course. It's by Paul Krugman, who won the Nobel Prize last year, and his wife, Robin Wells. It also comes with a study guide, and if you go to the co-op, you can buy them as a package. It's supposedly a deal. I know it's actually still quite expensive, but I do suggest that you buy the package. There will be some questions on your exams that will be very familiar to those of you who have spent some time working through the study guide. We'll also be having some homework assignments directly out of the textbook. So you, unfortunately for your pocketbooks, and I do apologize for the cost, that you will need both books, and I encourage you to pick them up and hopefully even have them with you on the first day of class. When I was first taking economics, my freshman year of college, a friend of mine told me that economics is just common sense and jargon. And that's actually pretty true, but the key is the word jargon. We're going to use some words in economics, words that seem very familiar to you, words that you may use in your everyday life, and they're going to actually mean something different in this class. So paying attention to what the words mean and not getting frustrated about it, but understanding that economics in some ways is like learning a foreign language. So in Spanish they don't say tomorrow, they say mañana. And we don't get upset at the Spanish for having a different word for tomorrow than we have in English. And hopefully you won't get upset at economists when we may use a word in a way that means something quite different from the way that word is used in your everyday life. What I'm going to do now is go through a little example of how we apply the principles of economics in a very sort of artificial economy. Don't worry if you don't understand all of it or if it goes by a little too fast. This is sort of a sample lecture. I'm not starting at the beginning of the class. I'm sort of jumping in a few weeks into it for this sample video because I'd just like your feedback on this particular learning tool. So let me know whether you can see the graphs or not. I think the lighting needs some work. Maybe you could have some suggestions for me on that. As well as, pay attention to what I'm about to say and realize that this isn't something you're going to know or even understand right today, but you're going to see this material again in a few weeks, having gotten some more background in the initial lectures of the course and the first couple of chapters of the textbook. But at any rate, I figure instead of starting at the very, very beginning for the sample video, which would be kind of, I don't want to say boring, come to the first class. You're going to learn something. You want to be at the first class. You want to be at every class because class participation is going to count toward your grade. Instead of going through the very, very beginning stuff right this second here in the middle of summer, I figured we'll jump right into some of the real meat. So one of the principles of economics, something you're going to hear me say over and over and over again that's going to drive you crazy, is that there are gains from trade. In fact, I'm going to write that down. Well, actually, maybe I would figure out how to get it to flash up on the screen. But, even if it's flashed up on the screen, I'm going to write it anyway. Gains from trade. Probably looking at my handwriting, having it flash up on the screen is probably a better idea. But at any rate, trade, what we often think of, and probably what you think of when you hear the word trade, is international trade, trade between countries. In this course, microeconomics, it does mean that, but it also means just trade between two people, a firm and a customer, a firm and its employee. Trade is happening all the time in our economy, and it doesn't necessarily involve anything that crosses international borders. And it's because of trade that we are able to exist. because it allows for specialization. I used to say that it was the thing that separated us from the other species, and then some of my students told me that no, that's really not fair, because ants have very developed division of labor within their colonies, and beavers and many other species where they cooperate and where they're able to gain from trade. For us, it's quite obvious. You ate food today that you did not grow. You are wearing clothes that you did not sew. If you are watching this video, which obviously you are, you have access to a computer that you did not invent, that you did not build, and this video is coming at you over a set of wires and wireless antenna and everything else that you personally did not create. Self-sufficiency is just not going to happen. And it's you know, I know that's an ideal for some people, but it's really it's not a good idea. Where the way we progress, the way we gain, is by trading with each other. And I'm going to show you again a very simple example of that in a second. But first, I just want to just give you a quick, very unfair, because it's going to be 30 seconds of hundreds of years of economic history. But before Adam Smith, the main economic theory was called mercantilism. And if you remember anything from high school social studies classes about mercantilism, it was all about getting gold. In fact, the European powers sent ships to the New World and throughout the globe, really trying to get gold and bring it back to their own countries, because of their belief that the more gold you had, the richer you were. And then Adam Smith came along and said, you know, this is not true. You can't eat gold. Having a lot of gold doesn't really do you much good. The way you get the wealth of nations, and the title of Adam Smith's book was of course called The Wealth of Nations, is through being able to produce, having a society that is productive. And he had this idea, an idea that we're going to call absolute advantage, which is that the country that is able to produce something at the least cost, that's able to make a shirt with the least amount of resources consumed, that's the country that should make that shirt and trade it with some other country that's better at making something else. And so one of the ideas was that the colonies in the New World were going to be really good at providing natural resources, and so that's what they should provide, and all of the manufacturing was best to take place in Britain and in Europe. And so the European powers, particularly England and Germany, would do all the manufacturing, and they would ship that back to the colonies and to other places. So and maybe Germany's not such a great example, but certainly England. At any rate, that idea was brilliant, and yet a little bit off, because Ricardo came along and came up with a sort of a revision, and what we still think of now as the correct idea, which is that the country should produce and sell to the other country if it has a comparative advantage, not necessarily an absolute advantage. So Adam Smith makes a lot of sense, common sense. The country that's the best at making something is the one that should make it. And Ricardo said, no, it's the country that has the comparative advantage, the one that is able to make it better in comparison to the other person. Now, this is, okay. So what Ricardo said was that the country that had the comparative advantage in producing a particular product was the country that had the lowest opportunity cost. Or if we're only talking about two countries, we'll say the lower opportunity cost of producing that particular good. That's a lot of words that you have no idea what they mean possibly, and that's okay, because we're, like I said, we've sort of jumped ahead a few weeks for the purposes of this particular video, and don't worry, we're going to explain all of this as we go along. And I think actually I have a little example here that may make some of it a little bit clearer so you just have a little something, to get you through the rest of your summer. Because I just know how excited you are to be about to be learning economics, and just can't wait for summer to end so you can get there and start learning. So here's your chance right now.